Do you like true crime? I hope you do, because if not, you're in the wrong place. But if you like true crime, oh my fucking god, are you in the right place? We are finally on level 14 of the ultimate true crime Iceberg, and my explanation of it. This thing is absolutely fucking gargantuan. This is all of it. We are here. So, without further ado, I'm gonna get into the video. If you want to see it from the start, there's a link to the playlist in the up there part. And if not, well then buckle your fuckles, get comfortable, and get ready to hear some fucked up shit. The Flora, Indiana Arson. Forgive the syphilis-riddled Indiana Star page that I'm on. Out in the American South, out in the American Midwest, having a mere penny is living like a god, so they have just shredded this website with ads. Oh my god, so many ads. I don't need to overcome addiction in 2022, but thanks for the concern. The Flora arson is basically an arson that burnt down a few kids, and I'm going to go ahead and read an article about it now from the Indiana Star, because I can't find anything from, like, Wikipedia or Unsolved Mysteries or any other nice source to read from. Galen Rose stood outside her home, dressed in a nightgown, frantically yelling to her children. Coming from inside the burning home were the desperate screams of 4 little girls. A neighbor, Jeff Cook, rushed out of his house. He saw the flames shooting through his neighbor's home, and then through the fog of smoke, he saw Rose. Sobbing, Rose lamented to Cook that she had failed, that as much as she had tried, the power of the black smoke had beaten her back from her children's bedrooms. Others tried too, but the flames engulfed the Flora home so rapidly it looked hopeless from the start. The screams didn't last long. From a distance, a neighbor watched firefighters bring the girls' bodies out on stretchers. Kiana Davis, 11, Kiara Phillips, 9, Carrielle McDonald, 7, and Keone Welch, 5, died in the early morning hours of November 21st, a Monday, in their home. More than 7 months later, the people in Flora, a town with 2,000 that is barely larger than 1 square mile, are still mired with grief, fear, and suspicion, still wondering if the fire was intentionally set. Now let me go ahead and check the publication date on this. July 2017, so this is pretty recent, goddamn. Rumors fly freely with few facts available to counter them. Reminders of the fire linger on the quiet Flora street. The residence, a duplex with 2 apartments, stands on a corner just steps away from Flora's downtown. The home is blackened by soot and smoke, but children's toys are strewn across a porch, untouched by the blaze. Even now, gusts of wind carry the burned, acrid smell of the home across the neighborhood, and the screams of the girls haunt those who still remain. After years of setbacks, Tracy Rose and his family were building a life in Florida. Rose, grandfather of the girls, went to prison for drug crimes when his daughter Galen was 12. In 2011, he came back into her life and into the lives of his grandchildren, after he was released from prison and became sober. He moved to Florida when his aunt found work for him there. Galen Rose, 29, at times struggled as a single mother, her father said. She eventually followed him to Flora from Missouri to be close to family. Through her father, Galen Rose said she was not prepared to talk about the loss of her daughters for this story, and I think it's kind of inappropriate to ask, in my personal opinion. She and her daughters lived with her father for 8 months, Tracy Rose said, until Galen secured her own apartment with more space. The apartment, the first floor of the duplex that burned, had a large front porch on a tree-lined street. The girls were often playing with each other outside, neighbors said. They were friendly and polite, often saying hello to those that lived nearby. They played with my dog, recalled Chastity Fox, a neighbor. They were the first ones that got her to fetch. She never fetched before. The Friday before the fire, Tracy Rose was supposed to be packing for a trip to Tennessee. He was beset with a feeling that he didn't want to go out of town, though he wasn't sure why. Rose lives in a small white house just blocks from where his daughter and granddaughters lived. The girls had a busy weekend ahead of them. They had a cheerleading competition on Saturday. Then on Sunday, Kiana, the oldest, had a basketball game. Kiana loved basketball, and Rose predicted she would have been a star in high school. He often went to her games. On Sunday night, Rose got on the phone from Tennessee with his daughter Galen during Kiana's game. "What's she doing now?" Rose asked his daughter, who gave a play-by-play of the game. Hours later, he was awakened by a call from Galen, telling him that his granddaughters had been killed. The rest of this is kind of just misery and grief porn. Oh, there it is. Lingerie ads. Again. God fucking damn it. An entire family's been killed and you're showing me half-naked women? Are you serious? God, I love ads. I just need to get an ad block. Fuck you, Criterio. Fuck your ad. Now, let's get to the mystery portion. The day after the fire, the Department of Homeland Security in a statement said the cause of the blaze was still undetermined, but it may have started in the kitchen of the lower unit where Gail and Rosa's family lived, possibly behind the refrigerator. 2 months later, the department released information that rocked the small town. Investigators found accelerants in the structure and ruled it an arson fire. Investigators then declined to talk more about the investigation and would not offer more details about the type of accelerants found. Officials have not released information about any subjects. They say they are no longer speaking publicly about the case, but it does remain under investigation. Wow, that's a fucking Sigma move. Yeah, somebody started the fire. Refused to elaborate. "It seems like it's a cold case already," said Fox, the neighbor. "Well, yeah, this happened in 2017, 5 years ago, and there's been nothing, so probably a cold case. The uncertainty has led to a creeping anxiety in the town, particularly when paired with another recent tragedy suffered in Carroll County, just 8 miles from Flora. Liberty West German and Abigail Williams were killed in Delphi in February, another unsolved killing that has resulted in unease and suspicion. Flora has commemorated the 6 girls with a bench engraved with each girl's name and age. Flowers lay on the seat. Eve Gibson, a Flora resident, put her face in her hands and cried when she spoke about the girls. And God damn it, another one! Stop! I don't want to see naked women! If I wanted that, I'd be with my partner! God, I love the internet so much. That's 2. Linthari, I need you to start a counter for how many lingerie ads I see in this video. Now, the rest of this seems to just be... That's 3! Alright. I'm done. I'm leaving this fucking website before we hit 4. We know what we need to know. Those kids died. That shit was sad. But, we're done with this website. Next! Wonton Butchery Murders. This sounds like, I don't know, a slash fic, to be honest. So I tried looking it up. There's not a lot of things that really, make sense. Actually, hold on. I think we might have found it. Wonton Butchery. A triple murder. Nope. Okay. Okay. Wow, that was a weird rabbit hole to fall down. No, I don't think this is where we're going to be going. I can't really tell what's going on here. There is a triple murder unsolved on Crimex. There is the 8 Immortals Restaurant Murders, and there's also the Reddit page. But everything I click on besides the 8 Immortals Restaurant Murders and user Cold Black Water looking for Ireland's sexual reincarnation, I don't know what's going on here. So, yeah, let's go on to the next one. Father's Day Bank Massacre. The United Bank Tower had previously allowed its guards to be armed, but changed their policy less than a year before the robbery, requiring the guards to be unarmed. At approximately 4 a.m. on Sunday, June 16, 1991, Father's Day, an alarm went off in a basement storage room at the United Bank Tower in Denver, Colorado. Records showed a guard in the control center turned off the alarm and took no further action. It's unknown if this incident had anything to do with the upcoming robbery. At 9:14 a.m., a man identifying himself as Robert Bardwell, vice president at the bank, asked for entry into the bank through a side freight elevator. He called the bank's guard room using a street-level security phone. Guard William McCollum Jr. responded by riding the elevator up from the guard room. When the doors opened, a gunman forced McCollum to ride to the sub-basement area of the bank, and there, the gunman executed McCollum, hid his body in a storage room, and took his electric pass card. The killer made his way through the bank tunnels and up to one floor to the bank's basement level area, which housed the vault and guard station. During the journey, the intruder set off an alarm at 9:20 a.m. when entering a stairwell. The intruder made his way into the vault area and first entered the guard room, and there, the gunman forced two guards, Philip Mankoff and Scott McCarthy, into a battery room, where both men were promptly executed. Investigators believed a third guard, Todd Wilson, returned to the area during or immediately after the shooting. Upon his return, Wilson was shot several feet away from the battery room, where Mankoff and McCarthy lay. Upon investigation, police determined that the shooter fired 18 shots during the killing spree, hitting his victims with all except one of the bullets. None of the 4 murdered bank guards were armed. Before leaving the guard room and entering the vault area, the intruder removed and tampered with evidence so as to eliminate any trace of his identity. The perpetrator seized 10 videotapes, bank keys, a 2-way radio, and pages of the guard logbook. Electronic records indicated that the intruder opened the vault door at 9:48 a.m. At that time, 6 vault employees were on duty processing cash delivery. The intruder demanded that the employees cover their eyes and lie on the floor. He ordered the senior vault manager, David Barranco, to fill a satchel with cash from the workstations. And before leaving the scene, the assailant forced the tellers to crawl into a small room near the vault, otherwise known as a man trap. The robber made his escape at 9:56 a.m. according to electronic records, leaving the tellers locked in the man trap. Using a broken spoon found on the man trap's door sill, tellers freed themselves approximately 20 minutes after the robbery. Prior to leaving the scene, the robber collected all the spent shell casings that had been removed from his revolver after firing it. The only physical evidence that he left behind was the 18 bullets he had fired. Surviving bank employees said the man appeared to be in his late 50s or 60s, wearing a gray sport coat, a white shirt, multicolored necktie, blue or gray slacks, a brown fedora, and mirrored sunglasses, and that he also had a bandage on his left cheek. The ensuing police investigation involved more than 40 FBI agents and 24 detectives. Investigators were baffled as to why the robber never filled the entire satchel with cash and stole only approximately $200,000, a mere 10% of the more than $2 million available in the cash room. They also did not understand why he executed the 4 guards, but left the other bank employees unharmed, since the guards were unarmed and didn't present any more of a threat to him than other employees at the scene. Police quickly determined that the man cannot have been Bank Vice President Robert Bardwell, the name the robber used to gain entry at the freight elevator, as the real Bardwell was vacationing in the mountains with his family at the time. From the beginning of the robbery investigation, authorities suspected that the killer was in some way associated with the bank. Wow, that's an incredible hunch to have. There was also some suspicion that the robber may have been a police officer due to having fired 18 rounds, a standard load carried by officers on duty. Investigators questioned current and former bank employees until narrowing their search to James King, a retired Denver police officer and former guard at the bank. After retiring from the Denver PD in 1986, King worked as a part-time guard at the bank between 89 and 90, leaving the job only 10 months before the robbery. King and his wife had also declared bankruptcy a year after he retired from the force, and he still had substantial debt in 1991, including $25,000 in credit card bills. King was arrested the evening of July 4th, 1991. God bless America, am I right? A search of his house found no physical evidence connecting him to the robbery. The only suspicious things found was a detailed map of the bank building interior in a folder marked plans. That's really suspicious. And 5 phony ID cards containing King's picture with different aliases. These phony ID cards would be suppressed by a judge and not included as evidence in his trial on grounds it was never established King had ever used them in any illegal activity, nor could they in any way be connected to the robbery and murders. A jury of 7 men, 5 women, and 2 alternates was chosen the morning of May 19, 1992, and the trial began the same afternoon. Denver Deputy District Attorney Bill Buckley led the prosecution against King. The prosecution contended several pieces of circumstantial evidence and eyewitness evidence pointed to King's role in the crime. The arguments presented by the prosecution included 5 of the 6 surviving bank employees identified King as a robber. However, they had only picked him out of a phono light-up on his second viewing, after the police had drawn a hat and sunglasses over the faces on the photos so they would resemble what the robber was wearing. They also presented the map of the bank building interior that had been found in King's house, conspicuously in a folder labeled Plans.
What are you planning?
King had carried a .38 Colt Trooper as a service revolver when he was a police officer, which he kept after his retirement, and had also used as his duty weapon when he worked at the bank. It was the same type of weapon used in the crime. Police had not found the weapon in King's house. When asked where it was, King said he had disposed of it because of a cracked cylinder. Police also did not find King's Denver Police Department issued gun belt or speed loaders in his house. King said he had gotten rid of them since he no longer needed them after leaving his job as a bank guard. When asked why he did not return them to the Denver Police Department when he retired, he said it was because no one there told him to bring them back. King was also a former employee of the bank and thus allegedly understood the security systems. King shaved his mustache after the crime. King purchased a larger safety deposit box the day after the crime. FBI agent Lloyd Cubison testified the stolen money measured up to be 1,009 cubic inches, almost the exact amount as the 1,000 cubic inch, that is, capacity of King's new safety deposit box, implying King had deliberately stolen a specific amount of money that would fit in the box. Defense attorney Walter Garash objected to this testimony as wishful thinking, pointing out he did not factor in the other items police had found when they searched the box, and the dimensions of the money did not match the dimensions of the box. When asked where he was during the robbery, King said he had gone up to the Capitol Hill Community Center with a match for the Denver Chess Club. However, none of the employees there remembered seeing him or remembered anyone asking about a chess match that day, and the Denver Chess Club had not held matches at the Capitol Hill Community Center for years. 17 of the robber's 18 shots hit his victims, implying the robber was well trained with firearms. Bank Vice President Robert Bardwell, whose name had been used by the robber, testified he had previously lost his bank access card, which he reported missing on August 13, 1990. James King had resigned from the bank August 12, 1990. He also testified guards routinely patrolled by his office. 18 bullets at the crime scene came from 5 different brands of manufacturer. It was highly unusual for one gun to be used in a crime fire so many different brands of bullets. In the Denver Police Department, it was common practice for police to deposit spare rounds in the bullet buckets and use those same buckets to load their duty weapons. Since King was a former Denver police officer and the Denver police had used many different brands of ammo, this would explain why the robber's gun fired so many different ammo brands. The defense's case, however, was a different story. Attorneys Walter Garash and Scott Robison defended King. The key elements of their case were no physical evidence tied King to the crime. Neither the murder weapon nor any of the stolen money had ever been found. None of the witnesses to the crime reported the robber as wearing gloves, yet King's fingerprints were never found at the scene. The large safety deposit box King purchased after the crime was not found to contain anything incriminating. Eyewitness identification is historically unreliable. Robinson showed the witnesses to the crime a picture of a man disguised with a hat, sunglasses, and mustache. just like the robber. None of the witnesses could identify him. Robinson then revealed that the man was famous actor Harrison Ford, Giga Chad play. James King had plainly visible moles on his face, yet none of the witnesses had mentioned moles in their initial descriptions of the robber to the police or the police sketch artist. James Prado, former head of security at the bank, testified that the man-trap had not been installed in the tower until after King had stopped working there, meaning he would have not known how to expertly manipulate it as a robber did. Prado also testified the map of the bank found in King's house was a standard map issued to all bank guards, and they were not required to return them upon leaving the job. Upon cross-examination, Robert Bardwell said he had never seen King before, and he had not worked weekends at the bank since 1989, which were the only days King was working at the bank. He said he was also not sure the precise day he had lost his bank access card. A convicted bank robber named Dewey Calvin Baker had at one point confessed to reporters that he committed the crime, though he later recanted. Another alternate suspect was former bank guard Paul Yocum, who had been tried and acquitted for stealing $30,000 from a United Bank ATM on Memorial Day weekend in 1990. He also lived less than a mile from the United Bank Tower. FBI agents William McMath and Charles Evans testified that when they went to investigate Yocum's apartment, they found a closet. What was in this closet? I don't know. It's just a... Hold on. What? Okay, here we go. I lost track of the line for a moment. Closet door secured with handcuffs. Inside the closet, they found boxes of .38 caliber and .357 caliber ammunition, as well as a police scanner and speed loaders, batons, replicas of badges of several police organizations, and dummy grenades. Yocum also had no alibi for the time the robbery took place. One of King's neighbors testified that she saw him mowing his lawn at the same time the bank was robbed. She yelled a Happy Father's Day-style greeting to him. After 53 hours of jury deliberation, King was acquitted of all charges. After the trial, the FBI kept King under observation for years, hoping to find something they could charge him with that was not prevented by double jeopardy procedure, but they found nothing. King lived what was described as a hermit's existence at his home at 665 Juniper Street in Golden, Colorado. He died of dementia at a nearby hospice on May 21, 2013, at the age of 77. His wife, who had stayed with him, predeceased him in 2009. 4 months after the verdict, Paul Yocum died of a heart attack at age 52. In 1997, King's attorney Walter Garage, along with Phil Goodstein, published a book about the case entitled Murders in the Vault, The Father's Day Massacre and Trial of James King. And that's all we have for this Wikipedia article. It's been nice to finally have a Wikipedia article again. Henderson, North Carolina Murders. This is another one of those bad naming conventions because there's a lot of crimes in Henderson, North Carolina. There's a lot of search results. I can't tell what OP is trying to tell me, and I'm not going to waste my time narrating the wrong thing just to have Redditors in the comments being like, Ian narrated the wrong thing. I've avoided it until now. I'm going to avoid it until the end of this series. So yeah, sorry to let you guys down. Next. Hendricks Family Axe Murders. We are back in the realm of everything good, right, and sweet. That is to say, Wikipedia articles. Oh, thank you, Jesus Christ, for true crime Wikipedia articles. Praise be. If you haven't donated to Wikipedia yet, I strongly suggest you do. It's a noble cause, and I donate monthly. It's just $2. You can do it too, and it helps Wikipedia. Anyway, that little diatribe over. You're never going to believe what happened to the Hendricks family with a name like Hendricks Axe Murders. Yes, that's right. All of them, except for the husband, David Hendricks, were killed brutally via axe and knife. Now, the crime scene suggested two perpetrators. Blood splatter suggested two perpetrators. The Illinois courts didn't care. As a matter of fact, they convicted David Hendricks anyways, even though he was out of town on business. Yes, great job. Now, luckily, David Hendricks was, set free. There was a retrial in 91, and the Illinois Supreme Court overturned the conviction, and Hendricks was granted retrial, to which he thankfully He's now a free man. He opened another orthopedic business, or orthodontic? No, those are teeth. Orthodontists are teeth doctors. No, that's a dentist. What the fuck is an orthodontist? Anyway, this dude got convicted for killing his entire fucking family because police detectives were initially dissatisfied with his demeanor. I've said it before, I've beaten this horse so many damn times it's coming back to life.
Jesus Christ, police officers, what the fuck are you doing?
The Sun Family Murders. This ought to be fun as we struggle back to r/unresolved mysteries. The Sun family was found murdered in their home in Cypress, Texas at 14015 Foster's Creek Drive at 7:30 p.m. on January 30th, 2014. Maoi Sun, an engineer, his wife, Mei Ji, 49, and their sons, Timothy, 9, and Titus, 7, were all shot in the head at least once, execution-style, in separate bedrooms. Maoi's co-workers had become concerned when he missed several days of work. He was a mechanical engineer for Cameron, a Houston-based oil and gas industry equipment manufacturer. After Maoi's co-workers contacted Harris County Police, they did a welfare check on the sons at around 7:30 p.m. and discovered their bodies. Authorities noticed that the back door of the house was open and that a window at the rear of the house was broken. The police described the crime scene as horrific. No weapons were found in the home, so a murder-suicide scenario was quickly ruled out. Sun was last seen leaving his job at Cameron International at 7:37 p.m. January 24th. His two sons, who had attended Sampson Elementary just down the street from the family's home, were last seen January 23rd. After the autopsies were performed, the estimated time of death was determined to be sometime between January 24th at 7 p.m. and January 25th at 11 a.m. 7-Eleven, make a wish. Despite the brazen nature of the crime, the murders still remain unsolved 6 years later. A year after the murders, in a desperate plea to solicit tips of the execution of the family of four, Harris County Sheriff Adrian Garcia used news conference to speak directly to the killer. I want you to remember that you killed two children. This guy's a killer, probably doesn't care. I want that to burn in your brain. This guy's a killer, probably doesn't care. I want it to give you a heart condition. I want it to give you ulcers. Well, I imagine a killer would care about ulcers. He said during a news conference in February 2015. Garcia also announced that the reward for information leading to an arrest in the case was increased from $70,000 to $75,000. Wow, a whole $5,000. Authorities have said a motive in the killing remains unclear. According to CBS affiliate KHOU, the murders garnered attention in the Sun family's native country of China, and some reports there say Maoi's son may have been connected to high-ranking Chinese government officials being investigated for corruption. Investigated? In China? Don't make me laugh. Chinese media has reported that Zhao Yongkang, a top Communist Party member, confessed to placing a hit on the Sun family while being interrogated about his involvement in corruption. Zhao said that he had the family killed because Maoi, a former employee of the state-owned China Natural Petroleum Corporation, was privy to Zhao's illegal dealings when Zhao was in the state oil industry in the 1990s. Sun reportedly helped CNPC purchase oil wells in the United States and oil extraction equipment, two areas where Zhao had channels to accumulate huge wealth. Sun had reportedly managed Zhao's assets in the U.S. and kept classified documents handed to him by Zhao's eldest son, Zhao Bin, Boxon stated. While at school, Sun was familiar with top party officials that have recently been purged for corruption. Sun met former CNPC chairman Jiang Zemin at China University of Petroleum in the 80s and befriended Zhao Bin in Texas while studying for his doctoral degree. However, the Chinese government has never substantiated any of these claims, and the Chinese sources making these claims aren't exactly the most reputable. The police in the U.S., however, have said that the Suns were your average quiet family and didn't appear to be linked to illegal activities. Other theories have theorized that it could have been a random killing or a home invasion gone wrong. However, none of the victims were bound and nothing from the home was taken. Investigators believed that the public, especially the Chinese community, might have information that could help solve this case. The police, however, feel that members of the Chinese community are too afraid to speak out. As the case is still open, police have not revealed much information about it. However, there's reportedly no concrete leads. So, yeah. Let's see what the comments have to say. I don't think this was a random act. Incredible. Sometimes where there is smoke, there is fire. If he indeed did have dealings with corrupt Chinese officials, so that's any Chinese official, then that is a reasonable explanation. Kind of reminds me of the Musalos. Interesting. Alright, that's enough of Reddit comments for one day. Next. Up next, we're on a much shorter Unresolved Mysteries article about the Hemlock Valley murders. Murders that occurred in 1995, where 3 women's bodies were found within the same remote bush of British Columbia's Fraser Valley. The murders remain unsolved. Wow, I would have never known that,
Considering it's on the Unsolved True Crimes Iceberg.
All 3 women were determined to be victims of homicide, and the cause of death was similar enough that police believe they were all murdered by the same killer. The serial killer, however, has never been found, just like a lot of them never will be. The bodies of Tracy Olige, Tammy Pipe, and Victoria Younker were found in remote areas of the Fraser Valley east of Vancouver between August and October. Olajide, who is 30 and the sister of former boxing champion Michael Olajide Jr., had primarily stopped working the street, but was still an active drug user, police said. She had a child. Her body was found August 12, 1995, on a trail near Agassiz. Pipe's body was found September 2, 1995, in the middle of a remote side road where there had been no attempt to conceal it. The RCMP said the 24-year-old frequently gave money and clothing to the poor, but fell into sex work to support her cocaine habit. She was last seen at one of the low-income hotels in the downtown east side. Drugs are bad, okay? Go ahead and add the actual clip there. And edit out me talking to you, Lintari, just so it isn't, like, awkward, break the flow of the video. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. Lastly, Younker's body was found on October 21, 1995, partially decomposed on an embankment at the side of a logging road. The 35-year-old sex worker was last seen September 11th at a government office. She didn't pick up her social assistance check on September 25th. Okay, Jesus fucking Christ, nothing good ever happened September 11th. Except for the birth of my cousin. He was born the same year as me, but just a few days later. Another pen lore, my birthday is September 7th. Make sure to wish me a happy birthday this year. But anyway, nothing good happened September 11th, and I fear for what my cousin is going to do in the future, because that guy was born September 11th. We all should be very afraid if he goes to art school, or at least tries to get in. Anyway, it's an unfortunate fact that women who have high-risk lifestyles, and by that I mean are prostitutes, are often overlooked when they are victims of a violent crime. What we must remember, or at least what the author of this article encourages everyone to remember, is that these women loved and were loved by somebody and deserve justice. Silly you, don't you know? The police don't see the pores as human. The Calgary sex worker killer. Now this is another one of those ones that I can't be very sure on. As a matter of fact, there was a shit ton of rapists, sex worker killers, and supposed sex worker killers in just the first few pages of Google, but I settled on Cody Legbokoff as who I think this is about. Now, Cody Legbokoff is a Canadian citizen who was born on the 21st of January 1990. That means he's 32 now. Yucky. And raised in Fort St. James, a district municipality in rural British Columbia. He's been described by fans and family members as a popular young man who competed in ice hockey, who showed no propensity for violence.
Have you ever seen hockey?
Though Legbokoff had a minor criminal record, he was not on the radar of local police, probably because he'd kick their fucking ass as a hockey player. Now, on November 27, 2010, at approximately 9:45 p.m., rookie Royal Canadian Mounted Police Officer Constable Aaron Keller observed Legbekoff pull his truck onto British Columbia Highway 27 from a remote logging road. According to a case written by Keller, Legbekoff's 2004 GMC pickup truck was speeding erratically, and on a hunch, the officer decided to pull the vehicle over for a routine traffic stop. He believed it was suspicious and even odd that someone would be on the road that late in frigid November. Keller suspected the driver of poaching in the backwoods and signaled for him to pull over. Keller was then joined by a second RCMP officer. Both officers said that upon searching Legbekoff's pickup, they discovered a multi-tool and wrench covered in blood, as well as a monkey backpack and wallet containing children's hospital cards bearing the name Lauren Leslie. When questioned about the blood on him, Legbekoff reportedly said he was poaching and had clubbed a deer to death because "I'm a redneck, that's what we do for fun." The truck did not contain a deer carcass. Officers arrested Legbekoff under the Canada Wildlife Act and called for conservation officer with tracking skills. A warden arrived and tracked the tire tracks of Legbekoff's vehicle up the road, and in the freshly fallen snow found footprints leading to the remains of one Lauren Dawn Leslie. After Legbekoff's arrest in connection with Leslie's death, he was linked by DNA analysis to the deaths of Jill Stacy Stuchenko, Cynthia Frances Maz, and Natasha Lynn Montgomery. These victims are respectively a 35-year-old mother of 6, last seen on October 9, 2009. She was found dead 4 days later in a gravel pit. A 23-year-old mother of 2, last seen August 31st or early September 1st, 2010. Her body was never found, but her DNA was later found in samples taken from Legbekoff's apartment. Cynthia Frances Maz, 35, last seen September 10, 2010. Her body was found in a Prince Georgia park the following month. Maz died of blunt force trauma to the head and penetrating wounds. She had a hole in her shoulder blade, a broken jaw and cheekbone, and injuries to her neck consistent with someone stomping on it. The Crown has said that Stuchenko, Montgomery, and Maz worked in the sex trade, and that Legbekoff was addicted to cocaine and used sex workers to get him the drug. Definitely. I can agree with the addicted to cocaine part, but if someone on coke is hiring sex workers, it's not for cocaine, it's for sex. I'm not gonna go to my PlayStation seller, oh wait, there are none. I'm not gonna go to the grocery store and be like,
Give me the biggest dildo you got right now. I want Moby Huge.
they're not gonna have Moby Huge. And lastly, we have Lauren Dawn Leslie, only 15, murdered on November 27, 2010. Leslie was far younger than the other victims and allegedly met Legbekoff online at the website Nexopia. She was legally blind, having one completely blind eye and 50% vision in the other. Leslie is included in the list of murder victims found alongside the Highway of Tears in northern British Columbia. Legbekoff's trial on 4 counts of first-degree murders was originally scheduled to begin in September 2013, but was delayed a month until October, and then again until June 2014. He hit him with that shaggy defense.
Wasn't me.
And pleaded not guilty to all 4 counts. The judge and 12 jurors heard testimony from 93 Crown witnesses and the defendant. Legbekoff testified during the trial that he was involved in 3 of the deaths, but claimed that he did not commit the killings.
No. Please, try to understand. Yes, I hit all of their bodies. Yes, my DNA is all over everything. But no. I didn't kill them. It was actually a drug dealer and 2 accomplices who I can't name.
Yeah, rock-hard defense. So hard that rock-hard defense started telling me about how it was about drive, it was about power. It stayed hungry. It devoured. Prosecutors obviously didn't accept this bullshit and didn't accept the attempt to plead guilty to the lesser charge of second-degree murder. Legbekoff was understandably and very predictably convicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder on September 11th, 2014. Keeping with the rule of thumb, nothing good happens on 9/11. On September 16th, Legbekoff was sentenced to life in prison with no parole for 25 years. Additionally, British Columbia Supreme Court Justice Glenn Parrott added him to the National Sex Offender Registry given the sexual assaults committed as part of the murders and Legbakov's apparent degradation of the victims' bodies. He lacks any shred of empathy or remorse, Parrott said of the killer. Yeah, that's how psychopaths work. He should never be allowed to walk among us again. Now, that is just about all there is to it. He did file an appeal, which was understandably shot down. Really just slapped that appeal right in the nutsack and told it to stay on its knees. There's also a legacy, but believe it or not, serial killers don't deserve a legacy. So let's go to the next incredibly depressing case. The OKC Butcher. On April 1st of 1976, 3 utility workers in between shifts decided to check out an abandoned house nearby in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. What they found inside was a severed thigh and a female woman's head inside a large popcorn bucket. The workers stated the head was so beat up they could barely recognize it as human. Police later located a torso within the home and, upon closer look, the head had been mutilated to have a bigger smile. Jesus Christ, did the fucking Joker commit this crime? Is that why it's on April 1st? God-tier prank? Unfortunately, no. It wasn't until 1993 that the remains were positively linked by DNA due to a missing person, Kathy Lynn Shackelford, member of the Sac and Fox tribe. On April 19, 1979, some children playing basketball noted a dog running down the street carrying a human head near the 300 block of Northeast 10th in Oklahoma City. When authorities investigated, they discovered many parts of the same body scattered throughout the neighborhood, covered with newspaper or put in brown paper sacks. These remains included a hand, a woman's pelvis, several pancake-sized portions of human skin. That's a disturbing distinction to make, and some other tissues. Each was reportedly carefully cleaned by her killer. Pieces of the victim's remains were found throughout the neighborhood for the next 2 weeks. A week after the body was first discovered, fingerprints positively identified the victim as Arlie Killian, a woman with involvement in sex trafficking. Her family claimed to have seen her only hours before the first remains were discovered. The final Oklahoma City was discovered March 6, 1986. A woman's torso and left leg were discovered behind a residence on 501 Northeast 1st Street. Almost a week later, the woman's head was discovered by a homeless person in the garbage behind a garage at 507 Lindsay Avenue. The body's tattoos linked her to the missing person, Tina Sanders. Oklahoma City police believe that the 3 murders are connected. There are several common threads between them, one of them being that all 3 of the victims are of Native American heritage. All of the women were living on the streets at the time of their death, with at least 2 having possible connections to prostitution. All of the victims were completely dismembered, their body parts left where they could be discovered, and their sexual organs missing. Oh god, did this guy pull a fucking Army Hammer? Did he literally eat the... Not even gonna say it. The dismemberment was non-surgical and crude and sloppy. It's believed the killer wanted his victims to be found, which is why he left their body parts in such public spaces. A possible subject was considered in Arlie's case a man named Henry Lee Lucas. Lucas was a known drifter who was eventually convicted of killing 11 people. But no arrests have been made and all 3 murders remain unsolved. The killers come to be known as the OKC Butcher. OKC. OKC Butcher. There we go. Jesus Christ. I know how to speak. Back into the land of Wikipedia for the Ardenwald Axe Murders. This is your reminder, if you have any spare change, just throw it at Wikipedia. Literally, pennies, anything helps. Anyway, the Ardenwald Axe Murders is an unsolved mass murder that occurred in the early morning of June 9th, 1911. There it is again. There it fucking is again. 9/11. Nothing good happens on 9/11. Except for my cousin's birthday. In Ardenwald, Oregon, United States. Then a neighboring community of Portland. The victims were the Hill family. William Hill, his wife Ruth, and Ruth's 2 children from a previous marriage. Philip and Dorothy. All 4 victims had been bludgeoned to death with an axe. Because both of the female victims were sexually assaulted, it was believed by authorities that the murders were motivated by sex and possibly the work of a sex maniac. Nathan Harvey, a landowner who lived adjacent to the Hills' home, was charged with their murders on December 20th, 1911, but these charges were dropped 1 week later, and further investigation into Harvey's possible involvement ceased February 1912 following an inquest. Several other suspects have been considered, including a vagrant named Edward Ramsey, but we'll read about that later. In the spring of 1911, William Hill, born December 19th, 1878, his wife Ruth, born March 26, 1878, and Ruth's two children from her previous marriage, Philip Rintoul, October 14, 1902, and Dorothy Rintoul, June 2, 1905, moved into a cottage in the rural community of Ardenwald, Oregon, and then, at the time, was located immediately south of Portland. William had built the cottage himself, and the family moved into the home early May that year. On the morning of June 8th, Ruth visited the law offices of her brother and father in Portland, who later stated she seemed disturbed about something, which she never disclosed. At approximately 8 a.m. on June 9th, the wife of C.W. Matthews, a neighbor of the Hills, knocked on the front door of their home after her husband noticed that William had not left the residence as he normally did each morning to catch the interurban streetcar to his job at the Portland Natural Gas Company. Upon receiving no answer, Miss Matthews peeked into the front window of the home and saw the bloodied body of 4-year-old Dorothy laid out on the floor. Clackamas County Sheriff Ernest Mass arrived shortly after the Matthews reported the crime. It was estimated that the murders occurred around 12:45 a.m., based on a broken clock in the cabin that had stopped at the time, along with the neighbor's report that his dogs had begun barking loudly at that time. The bodies of Ruth and William were discovered entangled in a bed, Ruth's lying beneath that of her husband's. It was determined that after William had been bludgeoned to death with an axe, Ruth was then struck twice in the head. After both parents were deceased, 8-year-old Philip was subsequently bludgeoned to death, with Dorothy being the last to die. The bloodied axe used in the murders was left in the Hills' home, propped against the foot of Dorothy's bed. It was determined by authorities that the axe did not belong to the Hills and had been stolen from the front porch of Joseph Delk, who lived approximately 3/4 of a mile north of the Hill resident. Most of the windows of the house had been covered in cloth and garments by the perpetrator, ostensibly to conceal the crime. Though some jewelry was missing from the Hill residence, other valuables and money were left behind, leading Sheriff Moss to exclude robbery as a motive for the crime. Because of the violent and sexual nature of the murders, Moss believed that sex was a motive and that the assailant may have been a pedophile. In order to assist the investigation, Moss brought a bloodhound from Seattle to complete searches of the Hill property and surrounding area, but these efforts did not provide any evidence. They didn't prove fruitful. A coroner who examined the bodies stated that William's injuries had left his head completely chopped to pieces on the right side, especially on the right side above the eye, deforming his whole face. Ruth similarly sustained a severe skull fracture that extended from above her right eye to across her whole face, as well as another fracture that broke her teeth and lower jaw. Dorothy had sustained several skull fractures to the front and back of the head from an axe blade, while Philip's head wounds appeared to have been inflicted with the handle of the axe. Based on the examination of Ruth's body, it was determined she had likely been raped after death, while Dorothy had been assaulted prior to her murder. Bloody fingerprints were found smeared on Dorothy's body as well as on Philip's arms. In terms of suspects, we have Edward Ramsey. On the morning of the Hill murders, a vagrant named Edward Ramsey was arrested at Oaks Bottom while attempting to float on a makeshift raft. After his arrest, it was believed by authorities that Ramsey had been the subject of a series of complaints spanning several years regarding an unknown man lurking in the communities east of Portland. Ramsey, a drifter, lived in the woods and subsisted by trapping animals and stealing food. Though initially considered a suspect in the Hills' murders, he was ultimately cleared of suspicion and left to go fuck off in the woods in peace. On December 20th, 1911, a 55-year-old nursery owner named Nathan Harvey, who lived 100 yards from the Hill residence, was charged with the murders of all 4 victims. Harvey, an Iowa native and local landowner, had been in a land dispute with William Hill prior to the murders, so there's definitely a motive, but it does not explain the weird sex shit. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Harvey had already been loosely connected to various gruesome crimes. In 1894, an 18-year-old woman named Mamie Welch was murdered in a strawberry patch on Harvey's property, and her body found lying next to an adjacent road. A series of other murders and mysterious deaths occurred within the Harvey family. In 1896, one of Harvey's brothers shot their mother to death before killing himself. And in 1899, one of Harvey's other brothers was found drowned in a mill pond in Milwaukee. Upon questioning Harvey's neighbors in Ardenwald, Mass reported that several women had told him Harvey had made improper proposals, there's some weird sex stuff, as well as insulting them. Mass subsequently stated that she had absolute proof that Harvey had taken the last train to Ardenwald on the interurban railway from Cazadero, which arrived in Ardenwald at 12:25 a.m. on the night of June 9th. Two witnesses stated that they saw Harvey exit the train at Ardenwald Station at this time. Despite the charges, Harvey had a large number of supporters who professed his innocence and protested his arrest, I should say. On December 23rd and on December 26th, mass meetings were held in Milwaukee and Selwood, during which over 500 signatures were gathered calling for the charges to be dropped. Some locals, however, spoke out against the protests, with one anonymous landowner telling the Oregonian, except by his friends, Harvey is feared. There are those possessed of evidence in the case that could incriminate Harvey. If fears of possible retribution from the man are allayed, I think they can be induced to tell you what they know. While Mass was convinced that Harvey was behind the murders, the charges against him were ultimately dropped on the 27th of December 1911, pending further investigation. He was released during a preliminary hearing, and in February 1912, a Clackamas County judge formally closed further investigation into Harvey. I don't know, it really sounds like Harvey's the guy. It really sounds like Harvey's the guy. Look at that face. Look at that face. Look at that mustache. That's a fucking serial killer. Next up, we have William Riggin. In May of 1917, Riggin confessed to shooting William Booth in Willamania. Wow, a lot of wills here. In October of 1915. During his confession in the killing, Rigger also claimed to have witnessed the Hills' murder along with a Mexican man who went by the nickname Brown, and a man named William Flynn. That is 3 wills here. The latter an alias, there we go, of Edward Ramsey. Riggin claimed to have met the men in Oregon City, and that they planned a robbery scheme together, looting local homes. According to Riggin, he watched outside the Hills cottage while Brown, armed with an axe, and Flynn entered to rob the family. Riggin claimed to have waited outside the cottage for approximately 30 minutes, during which he heard children screaming inside. After the murders, Riggin claimed Brown and Flynn exited the cottage with approximately $1,400 worth of gold and silver. For his role in the robbery, Riggin was paid a paltry $100. Upon further questioning, Riggin changed his accounts of events, instead claiming that the formal statement to have participated in a robbery and murders with Ramsey, not the anonymous Brown or Flynn. Riggin's 2 diverging accounts were riddled with inconsistencies regarding the Hills' cabin and other logistics. Despite this, Riggin was able to point out specific locations regarding the crime, including the site of the cottage, which had been demolished after their murders. Well, yeah, that's pretty fucking brutal. So, Riggin or Harvey? William Riggin looks like a little bit of a sleazebag. Does not look nearly as bad as Harvey. That man will haunt your dreams if you let him. Hey, so, you know how sometimes when I'm just given the name of a place to look for, I kinda can't find the right entry, and I can't tell you for sure what the murder is. Well, Smith is the most common fucking last name in the United States. Do you have any idea how many Smith family murders there have been? Too damn many. So yeah, I don't know which one of these is the right one, but I'm not gonna go ahead and narrate the wrong one and then not only waste my time, but look like a massive idiot. This has to... No, this isn't even... This is design error to the original posters of the Iceberg. I've saved my bitching about it until the very end. But yeah, you guys really should have thought of a different name than Smith Family Murders. How the fuck am I supposed to find the family that has been murdered that has the most common family name in the US? What the fuck is this? That is not funny.
What the fuck? What the fuck is this? That is not funny. That is not, there's nothing...
Rusty Day Murders. Rusty Day is best described as kind of a 60s and 70s B-list musician who made a name for himself in the Detroit rock scene. And as everyone knows, you can't have shit in Detroit, so his bands didn't last very long. What's notable here is that Day was fatally shot at his home on June 3rd, 1982. His son, his dog, and Garth McRae were also fatally shot during the same exact attack. The murder officially remains unsolved, although Seminole County Sheriff's Office believe the victims may have known the perpetrator and that the killings may have been drug-related. In 2011 and 2015, it was asserted that Ron Sanders was the one to perpetrate the shooting, and that is really about all we have for this, is this tiny-ass excerpt on a Wikipedia article. So, yeah. Englewood, July 4th shootings. Ending this one on a strong note, we have a public shooting. This one is very recent, though, only occurring about a year and a half ago on July 4th of 2020. 4 people were killed, including a 14-year-old boy, in the mass shooting in Englewood that wounded 4 others. At 11:30 p.m., July 4th, 2020, several people were gathered outside on the street of the 6100 block of South Carpenter Avenue when 4 people walked up and just started blasting. Police said 8 people were shot, 4 fatally, said Chicago police spokesman Jessica Rocco. The shooters ran off and no arrests have been made. Along with the 14-year-old boy, 3 other men or boys were killed in the incident. The 3 other victims' ages were not immediately known. The injured included an 11-year-old boy who suffered graze wounds to his leg and ankle. He was taken to St. Bernard Hospital and Healthcare and is in fair condition. A 15-year-old boy was shot in the abdomen and taken to Comer's Children's Hospital in fair condition. A 29-year-old man was shot in the foot and taken to St. Bernard in fair condition, and a 35-year-old man was shot in the hip, leg, arm, and wrist and was taken to Stroger Hospital. His condition at the time of writing was unknown. Neighbors said at the scene said people were outside enjoying fireworks when other people came up and started shooting. Fireworks were still going off around the neighborhood as police investigated the scene, which I'm sure really helped. Just hearing yee, bang as you're trying to find a gunman. And that does it. That is level 14. We are but 3 levels from the end now. We are so incredibly close. So if you made it this far, I'd like to take a moment to just thank you for watching the video. It really does mean the world to me. Big thanks to my editor. Without her, these videos would not be possible because she is able to put these together so freaky fast. It's like someone speed building a Lego set. And if you're new here, just go ahead and subscribe. It's entirely free and it helps my channel grow. And if you hate my guts, you can undo it later. So until next time, have a great time and memento mori.